Cool. So today we're trying a new thing. We have Akasha here, and she's gonna record this session for us so that years from now we can look back on this moment fondly, and so we can capture Dhruv's demo and all the other things that we shared today. So Akasha, you're on mute, but I trust that you're really there. Trusting. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, great.
There was a
Wonderful.
sign.
So, there were a few other people who had RSVP'd outside of our team. They may be popping in, including an individual that we had met in the Netherlands, and Selim, maybe Selim will pop in as well, who had submitted a pull request on the doc site this month, which is really,
Thanks for the help. This is
yeah.
when people noticed that you changed the. I think we did a tiny little improvement to one function in the use document API, and they noticed and did the repair to the React tutorial. So that was cool.
Yeah. But since we all know each other, I won't make you all introduce yourselves again. And we already know who's going to be demoing, so we don't have to talk about that. But for anybody here who hasn't yet dropped down to the blog recently to check out Jay Chris's new roadmap blog post, I do encourage you to do so. It's the most recent blog post on there. Anything that you want to highlight from that?
My resolution from having written two of these roadmap blog posts is that I should be more in the future about it, because I went back and read the one that I posted recently, and we've almost done all the stuff on that post. Like,
Mhm.
so thanks, Drew. But
Nice.
that means that the next things are going to be these heavier lifts, like building the Fireproof cloud and stuff. And so that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But yes.
And you were going to talk today a little bit about version 17.9, which just got pushed.
Okay, so because we had a new Pail release and some other stuff, that had just been churning along in the background, then there was a couple other features, and Dhruv had the stuff that you're going to demo was what pushed it over the edge to be worthy of going through the release process. So in 17.9, I got Dhruv's connector updated, which is cool because it is a backwards compatible update. People who are running the old one aren't going to have to deal with any kind of they probably won't even notice. It'll just get faster. But if they don't upgrade their stuff, it'll just keep working. So that's really cool. And then the other, like, crossing the T's and dotting the I's one we did is we got the files API to make it so you can update a document with files in them. There was like a bug where if you changed a document with a file in it without re-providing the file, then you'd lose the file out of the document. So that was pretty easy to fix. But anyway, so 17.9 is pretty close. I don't know. It's getting very solid. There's some things about the API that still need to be reviewed before. Like, I think that's what I'm looking for in 18. But 17.9 has a lot of cool stuff. Oh, and it's got the latest PartyKit in it, which didn't change anything for us except for all their bug fixes got pulled in, and so now it's more resilient on like disconnect, reconnect scenarios and stuff. So that's cool. So I guess that's like that whole 17.9 thing. I don't know. What's next, Megan? Wait, does anybody else? Drew, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was asking, with the PartyKit update, did the error of the limitation of storage get resolved, or is it still there?
No, like, it didn't change anything for us. So the reason that they have a limit on their HTTP request size makes a lot of sense. Like, you wouldn't want to change that because of the way that they're interacting with the Cloudflare stack. But the
Okay.
the data path we could take through to R2 instead of via the KV for our car files. I think that's something that we could like, I don't know, write it might be like something that people would have to deploy alongside PartyKit in Cloudflare to make it work today. So I'm just kind of waiting, hoping that Snil does it for us, because sometimes he'll, like, in the time it would take me to fuss about it, he'd be done already. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But for now, we can just keep using the S3 storage alongside PartyKit, and the only downside that has is it doesn't work as good for developing on an airplane.
You and PartyKit just got a shout out today.
Do you want to talk about it?
I haven't had a chance to read it. It's like hot off the presses. But Red Monk featured both Fireproof and PartyKit in their most recent piece.
They have a thesis that front-end developers are the new kingmakers. And so they're talking about how, if you're writing apps, you're the one who gets to pick the stack. And I think we all like to hear that. But in their research, they talked to some people, and those people told them PartyKit was cool. And so they wrote this article about PartyKit and a couple other stack things. So we'll be tweeting about that after this, I guess.
Great. So then, Eric, we were hoping you would maybe share some highlights from the SeattleJS event. Oh, you're on mute.
How about now?
You're good.
Cool. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun there. It was a large crowd, a lot of good participation. They were really active throughout the presentation. The main thrust of the presentation was talking about the power of using Fireproof to accelerate development, especially at the early stages, and also bring the data closer to the UI. And so especially for making the app fully reactive, and making it much easier to manage state in the app itself, instead of using a bunch of complicated API calls to a backend to do that. And everyone seemed to get it. There was a lot of heads nodding in the beginning when I asked questions about the complexity and the challenges with bringing up apps starting from scratch, and the need to get pulled into sort of back-end ways of thinking too early in the development process today. So I think the use case for Fireproof resonated with everyone, and people seem to generally understand, even though it does represent a shift in the way things are done, people seem to get the value proposition immediately. So it was a really fun event, great community. Looking forward to at least attending more events and potentially presenting again someday in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that, Eric.
I like
Yeah, of
that we
course.
get that message so consistently from people who hear about it. They're like, yeah. They're not like, what?
Yeah, everyone seems to understand that there's a problem. And yeah, that things, the way web apps are developed needs to change for sure.
Hey, Dhruv,
Hi.
are you ready? Are you ready to show us your thing?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Cool. Okay, I'm really excited. I got so Dhruv and I've been working on this forever. I'll let him take it away, but yeah, this is kind of like a culmination of 2 or 3 months of working on AWS stuff.
Yeah, so Dhruv is going to present his AWS connector.
Okay, so hey guys, I'm sharing my screen right now. Yeah, is it visible?
Yeah, it's coming in.
Okay, so as this was my first time presenting a live demo, I thought it makes sense to make a small PPT. I won't bore you guys. I will just skim through the stuff that I was building from the past 3 months so that you can understand the theory behind this. Okay, so first, to give you a little context of why was the AWS connector needed in the first place. Okay, you guys are able to see
We're not
the slides, right?
We're seeing an infinity screen right now. You need to share a different part of your monitor.
Oops. Right. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay. Now is it visible?
That looks great.
Yeah,
Okay. You can see the slides, right?
we see the slides. Yeah.
Okay, so to give you a context of why me and Chris set out on this journey to create all these connectors. So the Fireproof's architecture is designed in a way that the metadata is stored inside the local storage, and all the cars and the transactions are stored inside the index DB. So that works fine for local storage, sorry, for local development. But the thing is, we needed to have some type of persistent storage and live syncing capabilities. So that's why Chris started building all these connectors and giving the front end developers the flexibility to choose between these connectors. That's why I created the version 1 of the AWS connector. So our AWS connector, what it does is that it takes all these car files, it gives you a pre-signed URL, and then it allows you to put stuff into the S3 bucket. So before moving on to what I did, what my version looks like, it's also important to understand what is SAM in the first place. I just Googled a few hours ago, and SAM stands for Serverless Application Model. Okay, so to put it in a simple way, what we were trying to achieve in the AWS, we had to provision a lot of resources like Lambda, DynamoDB. We had to shift to S3 bucket, all that, and we had to define policies within that resources. And that manual task was quite intensive and cumbersome. So we decided that let's use SAM. SAM is this open source tool, and if I show you the code, wait, let me just show you the code. What SAM allows us to do is that, oops, yeah. As you can see, inside SAM, we can just write a template file, and then we can describe a bunch of resources inside the SAM, and we can also describe the policies for all these resources. So within just the single file, it provisions all these resources for us, and it also does the internal connection part. So that made it a lot easy to develop upon the AWS connector. That is why we decided to proceed with SAM. Okay, now moving on to the cool stuff. What did I do? Let's see. Okay, so the old version of the AWS connector, what it had was that both the meta and the data, main data upload and download, happened through the same S3 bucket. But then Chris thought that let's just shift meta upload and download to DynamoDB. And Chris, would you like to explain why you thought it in that way?
Sure. Yeah, so the metadata or in the original implementation, first pass was a last write wins register. And so it was really only safe for single writer use cases, which was enough to get off the ground. And the reason it had that constraint is that it was using S3 as its key value store, which is kind of a strange architecture if you are an AWS expert and you're thinking about, what Dhruv's about to show you as being the right solution. But we were starting from a foundation of like what is the least amount of kind of logical dependency we can take and still get baseline functionality. And so the old version was really the prototype for the super simple connector that now you see in the Netlify connector, for instance, which would allow like some enterprise to write a new connector for their proprietary backend in an afternoon. So we took that path, even though we maybe could have started out directly building something like what we have now. If we'd started from if we'd started with this, we wouldn't have had those way stations where we have something that works, but at kind of like with less dependencies. So now we have like a progressive enhancement we can do within the connector. And yeah, I don't know. It's is pretty neat. But the reason we chose DynamoDB for this is actually like a pretty easy DynamoDB workload as far as what it would be like to be a DynamoDB hosting this, because for every database there is a set of live database heads, current representation, usually on the order of one. But if you have heavy concurrency, then 2 or 3 people might write at the same time with writes that haven't ingested the changes yet from the rest of the peers. And so that always converges down to one head. But that's kind of, so then the way to think about the DynamoDB data model is that you've got, I don't know, five or six down to one row per database that tells you for a given database, where do you go in S3 to fetch the state for that database. And so even before we added WebSockets, we were using DynamoDB. There's also stuff that Dhruv wrote to track that live set of car files that are the pointers into the current snapshots that are live of the database. So that's a little bit of the background, but yeah, Dhruv, pick it back up.
Okay, yeah. Back to the new connector. So as you can see, the data upload stuff remained the same. That workflow didn't change. But what I did is that I took the meta upload from the S3 bucket and then shifted it so that now all the metadata, which is of this format, it has the CID and its parents, and I stored it in DynamoDB. What it allowed us to do is that first, the storing stuff was super easy, and then also as new transactions came in and as new car files got uploaded, we were also able to prune the old car files. This is how Fireproof has been designed from the very initial stages. It's a CRDT based architecture. So because of that, now the DynamoDB table only has the latest CIDs and the latest metadata. So that was the first step I worked on, and that worked completely good. Now, the second thing that I did recently is that I added a WebSocket connection so that let's consider an example that multiple clients are now connected to the same database, and it works fine. Like they can do data upload, they can download the metadata from the DynamoDB, but there was no concept of live sync in our AWS connector. So what I did is that I now, whenever the client got connected, whenever the browser got initiated, I stored all their connection IDs inside a new DynamoDB table. And as soon as someone did a meta upload, all of them were polled, all of them were pinged that, yeah, new data got updated, and they were able to fetch the metadata instantly. And the live syncing then took place instantly. So that's where WebSocket came in. And yeah, that is what I did. This is the end of presentation. So should we go to the live demo?
Absolutely.
Okay, sure. So let me just show you how the SAM stuff works first, and then we can move towards our application live demo. So for new developers, there are a couple of prerequisites that they need to perform. They should have an AWS account. They should have a root user, AWS CLI, and SAM CLI installed. There's a blog post by Amazon, and you can follow that. But once that's done, provisioning new resources is quite easy. Like you can just clone this repo and do a SAM build. What this does is that it generates a ES build of all the Lambda functions that I created. And once you do a SAM build, let's just see.
I want to jump in here. I almost wanted to mention earlier, the tough thing this handles is it links all the resources together also. So it's not just like creating the templated resources, but
Yeah.
it'll do like a wildcard name on the S3 bucket and then put that in through the rest of the template everywhere that S3 bucket should show up.
Yeah. Okay. Once the build happens, we have got our JavaScript versions of all the Lambda functions. And then just it's as simple as doing SAM deploy. Once we write this command, AWS will automatically provision all our resources and do the stuff for us.
And maybe worth saying, it's got administrator friendly stuff too. By that I mean like
Yeah.
Dhruv does the work on his end, and then when it's time to update the one that is like publicly facing that I manage, I can by comparing first I look at his pull request, of course, but then when I'm about to deploy, it gives me a list of all the stuff that's going to happen, and I can satisfy myself that it's not going to go like delete a bucket or mess with user data or change the existing APIs. So that's pretty neat in the tool.
Okay. And also the great thing about the current AWS connector is that I forgot to mention it earlier. Once you provision an S3 bucket, there's this concept called pre-signed URLs that we are using. So that let's say I have my own bucket deployed in my own AWS account, but Chris can also upload his stuff to my bucket because the Lambda function is designed in a way that I give him a pre-signed URL, which allows him to access my bucket. That's the cool thing we did. Okay, so as you can see, the resources got deployed and we got back a bunch of URLs. So now what we can do is that we can take this API endpoint, we can take the S3 upload bucket's name, and we can take the WebSocket and go back to our live demo. Yeah. So we have already created a sample to do application for you guys. Now what we're doing is that let's just run the server. Cool. Yeah. So now in two different browser tabs, I have the local to-do application open. Now when I go to both, and let's just create a new database for now. Fireside Chat example. Okay, so they're both in the same database. And whenever I create a to-do here, a new to-do gets reflected on the other browser tab. Yay, as you can see. If I let's say create a new here. So this thing is happening, this live syncing is happening with the WebSocket connector that we built.
Nice.
Okay. Sometimes you need to refresh stuff because WebSocket is not that great, as Chris would explain why you should still use PartyKit sometimes. Cool. So this was the demo.
Thanks, Dhruv.
Cool. Yeah. Love it.
That's cool. I guess, yeah, I wrote a thread online yesterday about what PartyKit has to offer compared to that. So AWS, of course, is cool because you already have an AWS account, and so you can just run it there. If you're not that person, if you don't have that AWS account, then PartyKit is cool because it runs on Cloudflare, and Cloudflare has their data centers much closer to your user than the single region that this will deploy to by default. So we could enhance this AWS thing to make it have the multi-region properties, but it would get more expensive and complicated to run. So maybe that comes in the future. But if you want something super simple that's fast like that, then the PartyKit will do it that way. I'm sure there's other ones that are like that too, but that's the one we've been playing with that is easy. Yeah,
Awesome.
Let's see, what else do we have on our agenda?
Thanks for demoing that, Dhruv.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, it looks really good.
So it's on me. I just found out that Mena was trying to get in, but didn't realize you had to join our Discord first. So that's my fault. I need to work on that problem. But glad you all made it today. And I think unless one of you has something that you'd like to share, I think the last thing that we have is just a community ask.
Well, and that's I posted in the Discord in the Dev Discuss how actually a video of what it was like for me to release 17.9, and it would be cool if somebody who's watching this is like, why is he doing all that, and just fixed it, because it could be automated. So that's the on the repo side, that's the next kind of little thing that would be fun to have help with. So that's my community ask.
Makes sense.
That's it.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for everybody who's gonna watch it later and see that cool demo. Great slides, Dhruv.
Yeah. Thank
job.
you.